Cohen-Tyner, your man on the street reporter, my lovely wife Layla. This is City of Portland Commissioner Nick Fish. Nick, where did you grow up?
I grew up in the Hudson Valley in Millbrook, New York. Big shout out to all my friends in upstate New York.
Could you do me a favor and tell us about some of the amazing things you're working on, some of the amazing things that have happened in Portland, the sanctuary city, going after Uber, all user restrooms, divesting from corporate securities, trying to tax the CEO, the worker pay gap, the neonicotinoids banning for the bees, the eco districts, the mass transit.
So let me just say,
talk to us.
Yes to all the above. So that's exhausting, but I'll try to hit some of them. So the President Trump has put down a marker, and in response to his Muslim ban, we've joined a lawsuit with a couple other cities resisting that ban. We've also stood up for our immigrants and refugees, and we recently signed on as a sanctuary city, and we're going to fight that tooth and nail. We have a great tradition here of respect and reverence for the environment, so we're in the middle of a Superfund process to clean up our harbor, which is now at risk because of the cuts at EPA. We're creating eco-districts throughout the city where we're trying to bring all of our best green building practices
Ran out of space. Keep on going.
and other things to various business districts, which is cool. I have the honor of running the city's public utilities, and we're going to make an announcement on Wednesday that we figured out a way to take poop and turn it into clean energy to drive all of our vehicles and to sell it on the market to make money for our ratepayers. The council did vote to tax companies a little extra that have a big disparity between what CEOs make and what line workers make. We probably will not be able to implement that because President Trump is, as we speak, dismantling Dodd-Frank. And if we don't have the information, it's going to be very hard to enforce it. Recently, we were asked to divest from some companies that were not model citizens in our pension portfolio and in some of our other accounts. And council thought about that, and what we've decided to do is divest from all companies. And we're going to stay in treasuries, which is the safest place to put our money. But we're just going to stay out of corporate securities for now. We are a city that has set some audacious goals. We hope to be a clean energy city by 2030. We have a climate action plan which has set very ambitious goals for reducing greenhouse gases. One of the things I love about this job is we work with our partners at the county and at Metro, which is the regional government, and there's a shared ethic about clean air, clean water, and clean energy. And we're not necessarily the national leader in each of those. We also look to other cities that are doing great work and cities nearby like Vancouver, BC, that are really moving aggressively to become more livable. But what I love is we've institutionalized these things. So we're moving our fleet. We have a lot of cars and vehicles that we buy. Well, we're going to move over time to make them all electric. So that's a big deal. We're cutting our greenhouse gas emissions. We're cleaning up our harbor. We are setting higher standards for our air and our water, protecting our water quality. We have a Bull Run watershed that has billions of gallons of water in reserve, which is really one of our competitive advantages. We're about to mandate green roofs in all buildings downtown, as part of our climate action plan.
I'm just going to interrupt for a second because all this cutting-edge, state-of-the-art, progressive stuff is happening, and Portland is not struggling. I mean,
Well, it's quite the opposite, and let me make...
It's booming, right?
Yeah, let me make the business case. When people used to criticize us for green streets and green practices and clean energy, the argument was, well, that's going to cost a little extra and somehow be a drag on the economy. Well, it turns out that was wrong, completely wrong. And what's happened is because we now have this brand, a reputation of being an environmentally conscious city, companies that share our values are coming here in droves. So Under Armour, Adidas, Nike's on the fringe, all these companies, Columbia Sportswear, companies that are involved in activewear and shoes and other kinds of things. All the windmill companies and the clean energy companies are moving here and bringing their headquarters. So it turns out that what's good for the environment is also great for our local economy. We say that about our ratepayers. We say what's good for the environment's usually good for our ratepayers as well. But that goes against the old thinking that there was somehow a premium you'd have to pay to go green building and high energy efficiency. It turns out long term, if it's part of your brand, it gives you a competitive advantage because companies that share your values want to be located here. Now, we're not going to have the Fortune 500 companies because that's just not the kind of city that we are. We'll have the medium size and the smaller businesses, which we hope will be able to grow. And we're getting a lot of the so-called climate refugees who are moving here from cities they're getting priced out of, or they're fearful that with the negative impacts of climate change, that
How
those
many,
cities
how
are not
many
ready.
thousands of people are moving annually to Portland?
Thousands. I mean, we've, just in the last 10 years, we've added, I think, 80, 90,000 people. So I think we're one of the fastest growing cities in the country. And, you know, they track the data on people that rent U-Hauls and those kinds of things, people who then register to vote when they come here. And they're coming here in large numbers. We're getting a lot of younger people that are coming here drawn to the outdoors and our values. We're getting a lot of older adults. It turns out, as the first age-friendly city in the country, a lot of older adults that want to be in a walkable, livable city for the next chapter of their lives are coming here.
How did you make it age-friendly?
What we did is we put together a huge coalition of all the right people, things like AARP, the Multnomah County and the health people, Elders in Action, nonprofits, you name it. And we competed, and we were the first city to get the global age-friendly designation. And really what it means is that we have said as a matter of policy that our goal is to be a city that is accessible and welcoming to people, and here's the key, of all ages and abilities. And so the test is a disabled child or an older adult with limited mobility. Are we a city that celebrates both and is welcoming to both? So an example would be Harper's Playground, which is a children's playground we built to the highest level of accessibility, or making sure that our trails and our parks are accessible to older adults, lighting, safety, those kinds of things. And if you designed your city with children and older adults in mind, it turns out that's the key to being a livable city. And we're very proud of doing both.
Let's say somebody's watching this in the Hudson Valley. How do they try to replicate, maybe impossible, probably impossible, to replicate all the wonderful stuff that's happening?
Well, you're already doing things that we're very envious of. So let's talk about what's unique to the Hudson Valley and to the Hudson River. You're probably ahead of us in terms of healthy food, farmers markets, all the food consciousness stuff. And we're very proud of our farmers markets, and we're trying to do more farm to table and get healthier food in our schools. But you've had a head start, and you got a lot of people who care about healthy food and who are incorporating forward-thinking practices into their agriculture. So I think that's a place where I think you're ahead of us. You are ahead of us in terms of cleaning up the river. Now, the river that runs through us is the Willamette. You've got the Hudson River. You've been working on that ahead of us. You have a governor that rather...
Just so you know, 35% of the PCBs allowed to stay in the bottom of the river.
Well, we have the same, we're having the same fight about, how much dredging and how much capping, and at some point it becomes a cost issue. It's a good, healthy debate, but you had a river keeper ahead of us, and so you've got a tradition of people looking out for the Hudson River. You've got a fantastic movement around healthy food. And you actually have a lot of people on both sides of the river, in Ulster and Dutchess, that are very concerned about the environment, protecting public lands, the kind of things we do. So I think we have a lot to learn. And your governor recently said you're going to shut down Indian Point. So you've taken a very strong stand against nuclear power, which in that instance was just nothing else, was too close to an urban
I'm
city.
not a huge fan of Andrew Cuomo, but there are some sterling elected officials that have served in the Hudson Valley over the last several decades. One being, can you talk about your father?
Well, very proud of my dad. My dad was named Hamilton Fish, and he served from 1968 to 1994. And he was elected when I was in 6th grade, and we moved to Washington. Unfortunately, my mom died just after he got elected. She died in a car accident. So my dad got elected and then had to deal with this terrible tragedy. And he was left with 4 kids. So my dad was a person of great character, and he managed to hold our family together during that terrible period. We moved to D.C., and he was a kind of a progressive Republican on a lot of issues, and we're losing that wing of the Republican Party. I think where I'm proudest of is in 1974, he was one of those courageous Republicans that voted for articles of impeachment against a president of their own party, and a number of his colleagues lost their next races because they were thrown out because of it. And he then was a champion for civil rights. He worked on the ADA, Civil Rights Restoration Act. He was outstanding actually on civil rights. In '94, a doctor told him he had 2 years to live. So he did something that was also pretty remarkable, is he did not stand for re-election because he couldn't guarantee the folks in Dutchess County and in his district that he would serve his term. And he died, unfortunately, of 2 kinds of cancer. He lost his battle in '96. I am a proud Democrat. He was a moderate to progressive Republican. I think of my dad every day. He's one of the models for my public service. One of the things I always appreciated about Dad, and I am grateful for, is he did not have a litmus test for his kids.
Please show Layla with that.
And that was my dad in 1974. And the way he raised all 4 of his kids was to give us room to find our own path. And I ended up going off to college. I worked for Congressman Barney Frank for a couple of years, and then joined the labor movement. And my dad
you were the general counsel for 1199. You were like the top attorney for 1199?
My firm was, and I did a lot of work for health and hospital workers. And my dad always encouraged me, even though we had from time to time disagreements about issues. And I think that's the thing that I am most grateful for. He set a very great example. And then he gave each of his children the chance to find their own voices. So here I am in Portland, Oregon, serving on a city council, doing work that I love, and grateful every day for the example that he set for me and for the rest of my siblings.
Can you just cut that for a second? And then I know sometimes